The calendar has turned to February, and that means we are in the home stretch of the college basketball season. Another wild Saturday ahead of us, including Riley Davis, 6 games between ranked opponents. Let's get ready.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily year-round national college hoop show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade, and I want to thank you for joining us alongside my guy, Riley Davis, national college basketball writer for the Field of 68 and Heat Check. Make sure you give him a follow on Twitter at Riley_Davis3. Number 3, don't type that bad boy out. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Coming up on the show today, we've got intrastate matchups in Indiana and North Carolina. Six total matchups between ranked opponents on Saturday alone. But first, Riley, I want to have a discussion about the tip top of this great sport right now. And here's the question to get it going, right? Yeah, let's start at the mountaintop and work down. Does anyone in these 363 teams of Division I, other than Purdue, want to be great? I've been saying all season long that it seems like there's no elite teams. And Purdue has seemingly separated itself from the pack some. First time this season, this week, I felt comfortable saying no other team than Purdue is deserving of number one. But the question is this: is that because Purdue's elite, or is it because they're not tripping themselves up like everyone else seemingly around them is? What do you think?
Yeah, well, again, thanks for having me on, Isaac. Always fun to get on this show with you and everything and talk all things college hoops. But yeah, to answer your question, well, let's just say there's the cynical side of me that wants to say everybody sucks. That could be due to our Tar Heels dropping a game they very much should have won last night against Pitt, to timestamp that when we're recording. Still today, thinking a lot about just missed opportunities there, which just makes me, at least when UNC loses, I want every other fan base to be miserable. So that's where I want to say you're right, Isaac. You're spot on. No one wants to be great except maybe Purdue. But more realistically, I do think, I mean, we still have to talk about Alabama. I still think Alabama is one of the elite teams in the sport, just because they tripped up at Oklahoma and got a little bit bored at Mississippi State. I don't think you can discount what they've done for how they've really looked over the last month and a half, 2 months of the season, where they were running SEC teams off the floor on a routine nightly basis. And
by double digits.
Yeah, right. It's still that 26-point win over Kentucky. And granted, that was before Kentucky had this realization that maybe we should put shooting on the floor. But still, like that's something that's still stuck with me. And big wins over Mizzou. They ran them off the floor. Like they've beat, again, it might not be elite teams, but they've beat good tournament teams handedly and did so in dominant fashion. Oh, and by the way, they just beat Vanderbilt by like 1 million. A Vanderbilt team that's not as bad as you might think.
That's right.
They're not, this is not the Bryce Drew 0-20 SEC play Vanderbilt teams. They have some pieces, they have some talent, and Stackhouse is a pretty good X's and O's coach. So I wouldn't say that wins it, it doesn't put them above Purdue, who's just turned into an absolute wagon over the past few weeks. But Alabama's a team I keep coming back to. I still think they have the higher ceiling than Purdue, which might sound a little insane to verbalize that with how well Purdue has been playing and what they've been getting out of their guards and what they've gotten out of guys like Mason Gillis, who just goes off for 9 threes against Penn State. But those two are kind of at the top, and Houston, I think, still has such a high floor. I mean, Houston to me just has an Elite 8 floor because of their defense and rebounding, even if they've had some struggles in AAC play.
Yeah, and I'm right with you with Alabama. Like that Vanderbilt win does everything you need to make you forget about what happened at Oklahoma for sure. And I'm with you going forward on them. And I think part of that is with like the Purdue Alabama conversation, or the Purdue, like maybe Kansas conversation, is in some ways to me about the differences in these conferences. Like the Big 12 is just eating itself. These top 6 teams, like I was talking about earlier in the week, I feel like if essentially any of those top 6 Big 12 teams were in the ACC, they would be top 5 in the nation right now because they'd be slaughtering everyone. And I think it's kind of similar for Purdue in the Big 10. It's like, does anybody want to be second in this conference behind the Boilermakers? Like Indiana will make a run and then they fall to Maryland.
Right.
Like these kind of things. And the same goes for what we're talking about with the SEC. It's like all over the place. And so I wonder if some of that has to do with the difference in the makeup of the conferences this year. Like to your point about Houston, it's like, man, that Tennessee defense is similar, but the roller coaster of their offense, I just do not trust them at all. They score 80 over the weekend, and then look at what happened to Florida midweek. I cannot trust Tennessee. So
yeah, and
go ahead.
I think to some extent, we've talked a lot about parity in the league. We've talked about no great teams, which, to be honest, it feels like no great teams gets thrown out like 4 out of every 5 years. There's no great teams. Like I know in 2021 we had Baylor and Gonzaga who were elite all season. 2019 you had Duke, UNC, Virginia, all 1 seeds in the ACC. I'm trying to remember. Am I forgetting who was that last 1 seed that year? I think there were other great teams that year, but 2019 was the last year I remember. It felt like there was probably 4 or 5 teams that were pretty dominant all season long. Gonzaga, I'm sure, was great. That Gonzaga team was pretty nasty. I think they lost to Texas Tech in the Elite Eight. I was trying to remember. But yeah, so that's where it seems like a trend for, you might have 2 or 3 years in a row where you get this no great teams trope thrown out. And it's like, when is it actually accurate versus when is it just we're all confused because teams are inconsistent? But I do think it is pretty applicable this year where it feels like you have very few teams who are consistently good on both ends of the floor, and not even like consistently great. Like Tennessee has one of the best defenses we've seen over the past decade plus. I mean, I think there have been a couple different articles, one from Heat Check, one from Busting Brackets, that have talked about how Tennessee's defense right now in their adjusted efficiency is basically in rarefied air and hasn't really been done in the Ken Pom era.
Right.
But like you mentioned, their offense is still technically top
41st.
40. Yeah.
41st in Ken Pom right now. Yep.
But they're still, it is so inconsistent because there's not a guard like Kennedy Chandler who kind of sets everybody up. You have Zakai Ziegler, who's been excellent this year, but he's 5'9" and has some limitations. Julian Phillips hasn't quite been there, and Vescovy is kind of just as erratic and streaky as he's been for most of his career.
Yeah.
So,
and to your point about like both ends of the court, right now, as of the time of this recording, there is one team in the nation, top 10 at Ken Pom on both sides of the floor. Who is it? You got it, Riley?
I'm looking at it now, and it's taking me. Is it Alabama still?
It's not.
No,
they have dropped to 17th offensively. It's Houston. They are 8th in adjusted offense and 3rd right now in adjusted D. And so back to your point earlier about Alabama and Houston being 2 of the other teams that you trust that could be on that Purdue level. I think that helps bear that out, but also some of this parity. And so as we look to round off this conversation, the final question I want to ask with it for us to think about and maybe answer is, other than Purdue, who are perhaps like the most 4 trustworthy teams in college basketball? I'm with you on Alabama and Houston. Are there maybe 2 or 3 others that we could quickly identify that, like, for example, I don't trust Tennessee for 6 games straight in the NCAA tournament. As you said, the defense will be there, but here's the roller coaster again of the offense. Are there any others to identify that's like, yeah, I see this and I can trust you for a little bit?
Yeah, there's 2 that stick out to me. I think they played each other earlier this year. No, they didn't. UCLA and Virginia, who were both in that Roman main event, but ended up not playing each other.
That's right.
In UCLA, they're coming off of back-to-back losses at Arizona, at USC. So maybe that sounds a little counterintuitive to pick them, but you really can't fault them for losing at Arizona. 6-point game, offense never really got going. The USC loss in the battle for LA, that one's a little more confounding. They only scored a point per possession, and USC scored 1.2 points per possession and hit 10 threes on them, which hasn't really happened to UCLA this year. And they've been really stout defensively, and they've done a good job of running teams off the 3-point line. So that was hopefully an outlier for them. But I think when they sort of have, it's funny that this is our 3rd year of seeing this UCLA core of Tiger Campbell and Jaime Jaquez and people thought kind of last year that maybe
after Juzang's gone. Yeah.
Or that they even fell off last year and that the Final Four run was a fluke, but they messed around and got a 4 seed and came very close to getting back to the Elite Eight, to where that could be a team that I think has all the pieces to make a Final Four run, especially if they can get Amari Bailey healthy.
I think that is a key for UCLA, certainly. And to your point about Tiger Campbell, that's what solidifies it for me. Is we have this conversation all the time about how important guard play is, both in terms of talent and experience, and he certainly brings that. I'm with you on Virginia. When I was thinking of my top 4 outside of Purdue, they were the 5th team for me, just on the outside looking in, and I had Kansas as my other one. I just think some of that experience, the leap that Jalen Wilson has taken, Grady Dick, to me being a top 5 freshman in America, they would do enough. I know they had that 3-game losing streak that they just ended at Kentucky in impressive fashion. I think that unit has just enough balance to be trustworthy for me, along with DeJuan Harris, if we're talking more about guards, to be consistent in an NCAA tournament type of setting. Going to be interesting to see how Purdue carries forward. We're going to talk about them a lot more here in just a second, because with acknowledgement, Riley, of the state of Kentucky, the states of Indiana and North Carolina are the 2 thirstiest college basketball states in the nation, and the 2 premier programs in each of those will square off this weekend. One with both teams ranked, one with neither team ranked. We're going to get you ready for both matchups in just a second. But before we do, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, the America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for the Locked On Network. Hey, and if you're new to FanDuel, even better. They got so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. So download the app now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. You'll get up to $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. This app is safe, secure, and super easy to use. And best of all, you get your winnings instantly. I love this app. It's what I've used for daily fantasy for myself for years now. So join it today, FanDuel.com/lockedon, to claim that no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Riley, we set it up on Saturday. Coming up, we've got #1 Purdue at 21 Indiana. They're in Assembly Hall, as well as North Carolina at Duke. Folks, we'll let you guess which one of those matchups I was talking about are both ranked and the other is not. Let's start in the Hoosier State. #1 Purdue going to 21 Indiana. Hoosiers coming off a loss at Maryland that we referenced just a little bit ago. Race Thompson has been back now for Indiana. That's important. Still no Xavier Johnson, although he's getting some work back in. Ken Pom favors Purdue by 3. Riley wants us to consider, can Indiana step up and hand Purdue just their second loss this season?
They can, but I don't think they will. I think what Purdue's done their last 2 games, where they're coming off or they had 2 tests in a row that were really close, where they got pushed to the brink by both Maryland and Michigan, the first of which came at home. But then they got the Spartans at home, and it was coming after a game where Michigan State kind of pushed them in East Lansing the first time they played, and it seemed like the Spartans came into that contest pretty confident, yet it really wasn't much of a game after like the first 10 minutes. It was kind of a game that Purdue ran away, built an early lead, and never really relinquished it. And Michigan State got close here and there, but they kept them at arm's length. And then, of course, what they did to Penn State, where it was just Penn State hung around a little bit in the first half, but they just went nuts in the second and pulled away to where I think that they've kind of they're playing with an edge right now, and it looks like they're not messing around anymore. And it's just
as they've done. They've done that this season at times.
And I think what most amazes me about this Purdue team is you look at their guards, the freshman guards, Braden Smith,
thank you, yes,
Fletcher Lawyer, neither of whom are especially plus athletes. Neither of them are especially crafty with the ball in their hands or super dynamic. But when you have Zach Edey, who you play through, it's not like Zach Edey's a point forward, but he's drawing double and triple teams and making really smart passes. And you got Braden Smith attacking a closeout, or you have him making a cerebral pass to a wide open Fletcher Lawyer, who's going to make the big shot. Like, they're just such a tough team to cover, and they run Matt Painter's offense so well. It's like it doesn't make sense how you. I guess it just shows the importance of fit when you have someone like a talent like Jaden Ivey, who was a top 5 pick.
And then do this.
And the offense just seems to run better for what Painter wants to do with this current roster. And that's not a knock on Ivey. That's not saying he was the problem or anything, but it just seems like these guys fit Painter's his scheme better. And, he's going to run more set plays, and it's not going to be your freewheeling ball screen heavy offense that Ivey probably would have flourished even more in. So yeah, what he's done there, I think it's so tough to stop. And I mean, Indiana's been solid defensively, not at the level they've been at last year, but yeah, I just don't know offensively. They're a little bit too inconsistent, I think, to keep up with what this Purdue team can do if it becomes a little bit of a blitzkrieg. But what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, there are certainly some things like if Jalen Hood-Schifino has a game, I trust that more at home than I would if this game was at Purdue. Never know what Trace Jackson Davis is going to do. He's just been so good this season, but against Zach Edey, I don't know. That height might win out over this undersized Jackson Davis. And, with so much attention to the National Player of the Year frontrunner in Edey, with so much attention paid to this freshman backcourt who, guys we didn't expect to do what they're doing that you mentioned, it's easy to forget about like a Caleb First and everything he can do for this Purdue team. And so I just think a lot of those pieces are in place. I'm still not sold on how a freshman backcourt will navigate March and April, but in this one game scenario, I trust what they're doing. And so I'm with you. I am taking Purdue. I love what you said there, Riley, that Purdue's not playing around anymore. They're started realizing they've come really close to getting clipped. And in this one, I believe the Hoosiers and Mike Woodson's team will have their attention. Let's flip the script and talk about North Carolina and Duke. They are both unranked in what is widely regarded as the greatest rivalry in all of not just college sports, but for a lot of people, all of sportsdom. First time unranked in their matchup since the 2020-21 season, when both times they played were unranked. Prior to that, the last time both of these teams were unranked when they met was February 27th, Riley, of 1960. 1960. That is just absolutely wild. They come into this game, at least at the time of this recording, tied for 6th. When could we have last said that about the Tar Heels and Blue Devils? It's the first matchup of the Hubert Davis, John Scheyer era of what I think both these guys are around to stay for a couple decades. I think they're both going to be successful. I think this will be a long-standing rivalry. And here's how I want to frame up this game. With both teams kind of scuffling here and there, who is this game more important for between Duke and North Carolina? Let's have that conversation.
I mean, my instinct is to say UNC just because they have one Q1 win, and maybe that'll bump up to 2 depending on how NC State finishes the year, because at the time of UNC beating NC State, that was a Q1 win. This gets into some of my frustrations with the net, how it knocked NC State out of Q1 territory.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's where I'm like, at least from a resume perspective, and you have a UNC team who has basically been cast aside after that 4-game losing streak to start the year, where everybody thought, oh, they're overrated. That was a fluke what they did in March. So you got to think that starts to wear on this team to maybe have a sort of emotional lift and dig out of that. But at the same time, it's Carolina Duke. Like, both teams are going to have emotional lifts going into this because of the nature of a rivalry. Where I do see Duke's side is the fact that they've lost 4 out of the last 5 to UNC. They're coming off of those last 2 losses in particularly embarrassing fashion. At least the one in Cameron. I guess the one in the Final Four one was obviously a phenomenal, very much a 50-50 game where either team could have won. At the same time, I wonder how much that affects anybody else on the team aside from Jeremy Roach, since he was the only one who was there last year.
Jalen Blakes affects him too. And all his playing time. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it could be one of those weird games where Jalen Blakes hits like 3 or 4 threes. That happens in UNC Duke games. Like, we very well could see 6 or 7 combined threes from Leaky Black in Jalen Blakes.
Wildly.
Because this game gets weird. It brings the best out of players. Like, that stuff happens.
And this game comes, I mean, part of what makes that a very feasible reality is because, I mean, you're coming in, Dariq Whitehead's status is unknown at this point. Thankfully, he did not suffer a ruptured Achilles as I feared he did, and will be back certainly this season. Whether that's Saturday remains to be seen. RJ Davis for Carolina has been on fire until he suffered a dislocation on his shooting hand against Syracuse a week ago, and then proceeded to go 3 of 15 from the field and 0 of 6 from 3 against Pitt on Wednesday night. What kind of shape will he be in? Caleb Love has been heating up a little bit for the Tar Heels after a season where he's not played that well, and we know what he does against Duke. And so, I mean, there is a little bit to what you just said about the Jeremy Roach, Jalen Blakes of it all. It's all new faces for Duke outside of that. And I think that does steal from this rivalry a little bit, where it's not these known names that have been in year after year after year.
Mm-hmm.
To my initial question, I would answer it the same way. I believe that it is Carolina, who right now only has that one quad 1 victory. After losing to Pitt, now has a quad 2 victory, whereas Duke has 3 quad 1 wins and no losses outside of quad 1. So they haven't taken any, and even the loss to Pitt isn't bad for North Carolina. It's just more damaging than any loss Duke has. And because of those preseason expectations, I agree with you that North Carolina is in, I won't call it desperate territory, but at least more desperate than Duke is currently. Ken Palm has the game Duke by you look at as you prepare for this one, Riley.
Sorry, can you cut out for a second?
I'm so sorry. Ken Palm has the game Duke by 4.
And who would I take?
Yes.
I mean, I'm rolling with the heels. You can take my bias into account, but I do think it's going to be a game that brings the best out of UNC. I can't imagine RJ shooting nearly as poorly as he did against Pitt. And I mean, who knows, maybe he can get a little more used to whatever finger injury he's working through. Leaky Black has to start hitting some threes at some point. He was money from the corner to start the year. I think he's 2 of his last 22 from 3. This would be a great game for him to get out of that slump. But I do think UNC matches up with Duke well, just considering the size that both teams have in their front court with Kyle Filipowski, Derek Lively against Pete Nance and Armando Bacot. Ryan Young, you'll throw him in that mix because he'll probably see a lot of minutes as well.
Right.
The thing that I'm going to be looking most towards is just how if UNC can do anything with the high ball screens that they ran repeatedly in those last 2 matchups of the season, which it just being honest, it has not been nearly as effective this year without Brady Manick there to space the floor. You're seeing a lot more cramped courts. You're seeing defenders sagging off, Leaky for sure, and even Pete Nance some as well. And until guys start making shots, like you're going to be dealing with that to see, maybe either one of those guys could hit a couple early and get in a rhythm. I'm also looking to see, does either team have a guy come off the bench and be that spark? Like we mentioned, a Jalen Blake type, or maybe it's Jacob Grandison for Duke, or for UNC. I think every Carolina fan would love to see Tyler Nickel have one of those games where maybe he checks in, hits a couple threes, and provides some spacing. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but every time Nickel's on the floor with Caleb Love, it looks like he's always looking to hit him on a little drive and kick.
And they got a layup out of that on, I mean, no, you're talking drive and kick, but they had a nice connection against Pittsburgh on Wednesday night.
Right. Yeah, I know, where it's like Love is always looking for Nickel, which I think shows that he trusts him, which means a good bit coming from your junior guard and one of the leaders on the team.
Yes, so this will be a big matchup. I think based on what happened with Armando Bacot against Pitt on Wednesday night, I think that game has his attention, and he's going to be locked in and ready to go for this one. Excited to see that front court battle, and we've got the Western connection between Pete Nance and Ryan Young.
Right,
little storyline there, as well as last year we had the Marquette connection in this game between the teams as well. Well, friends, from that Indiana-Purdue game, it is not the only ranked matchup on Saturday. We have 5 others around the nation. We'll get you ready for those in just a second. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. You looking for a delicious treat, but you don't want all the fat and calories? Well, then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. And if you're like me, where you want to do that without compromising taste, then man, I've got just the thing for you. You got to try a Built Bar. What makes it so good? Well, for starters, it's covered in 100% real chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro and peanut butter brownie. I mean, come on. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste great while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is they're healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you ain't got to wait for it to come You can head on down to Walmart or Sam's Club. Tell Uncle Sam Walton, hey, I want some Built Bars. Give them to me now. So grab yourself a box of cookies and cream or churros or whatever it may be. I promise you, you won't be disappointed. Okay, Riley Davis here joining us on today's episode of Locked On College Basketball. We want to get you ready with a few of the games, so many great games this weekend. And so we obviously can't talk about all of them, but I do want to highlight because just on Saturday alone, there are 6 matchups between ranked teams. That means 12 of the top 25 are playing each other. We've already talked Indiana, Purdue. The other 5, I'm going to rattle them off, Riley, and then I want you to take us where you'd like to head with it. I'm going to give them to us in chronological order here. Noon Eastern on ESPN, number 8, Kansas at 13, Iowa State. Ken Pom has it, Iowa State by 1. Next, 2 Eastern time on ESPN, number 25, Auburn at number 2, Tennessee, looking to rebound from that loss at Florida. Ken Pom, this is a massive number, has Tennessee by 10 in that one. 23, Miami at 20, Clemson, 3 Eastern, ACC Network. Ken Pom has Clemson by 1. 4 o'clock Eastern, ESPN 2, number 10, Texas at number 7, Kansas State. Ken Pom has Kansas State by 1. Listen to how close these are. This is crazy. And finally, the nightcap. And I am excited. One off the radar maybe for folks. Number 12, Gonzaga at number 18, St. Mary's, 10:30 Eastern on ESPN. This is not a thing wrong what I'm about to say. Ken Pom favors St. Mary's over Gonzaga by 5. Riley Davis, when you look at that 5-game slate, what stands out to you?
I'm really looking forward to Gonzaga and St. Mary's as well. I think I told my wife this the other day, but because we'll be watching the Carolina game together, that I really hope Carolina wins that game because I don't want to be in a bad mood watching Gonzaga and St. Mary's. And I don't want to be, when UNC loses, I'm kind of just like, whatever. I might as well not watch anything the rest of the night. And I want to actually tune into this game and be able to enjoy it. But yeah, let's talk Gonzaga and St. Mary's. I think that's going to be so fascinating, not just from the on-court product, but also the storylines with Gonzaga this year being a little bit who casuals might think they are, and that's fraudulent. That doesn't mean they're a bad team, that they just legitimately are a team that has been beating some not so great teams. And they still have a pretty good resume though, because they got that win over Baylor and the wins over Michigan State and the non-con. But yeah, maybe actually Baylor might have won that game. I can't even remember. It was a 1-point game.
It was. I'll look back while you're talking. Keep going.
But yeah, I think Gonzaga desperately needs a win here. But I just think that
Baylor won by 1. Yep.
Okay. Gotcha. But they have another. Gosh, I know they have another good win that I'm forgetting about. From
they beat Kentucky, beat Michigan State. They beat Alabama. That's it. That's what.
Okay, that was it.
Yes.
That was it. Yep. But yeah, I think going into Moraga, that's a hostile environment, and just the way that St. Mary's plays, where they can slow the game down, take the air out of the ball, force you into long possessions and tough shots, and they're also forcing a ton of turnovers this year. I don't think that bodes especially well for a Gonzaga team that still isn't quite there from a guard perspective, where, Nolan Hickman has flashes of brilliance, but he can also have some turnovers, and he's sort of struggled on defense. And even Gonzaga as a whole, aside from really Malachi Smith, and there hasn't been a player who's been good, like consistently good on both ends of the floor. Anton Watson's been a good defender, but you don't know what you're going to get from him as much on offense. And yeah, so St. Mary's defense, and then they have a guy, Aidan Mahaney, freshman out of Australia, and I think he gets it done for the Gales.
Yes, man, had a massive game winner last weekend against BYU. Poor BYU, man. They've been bitten at home by both Gonzaga and St. Mary's. Listen, Ken Pom right now projects St. Mary's, not Gonzaga, to outright win the West Coast Conference this season. This is the first of 2 matchups. We'll get another one at Gonzaga on Saturday, February 25th. And so 2 great matchups here in the WCC that might or might not decide it. Some of it is going to come down to how they continue to perform against the other teams in the conference. Outside of that, I'm really curious to see how Tennessee rebounds from that loss midweek to Florida. But the one that's really interesting to me is Miami at Clemson. We're starting to see a couple cracks with Clemson. And as we said, Clemson is favored by 1 in this game on Ken Pom. But, man, that Miami guard play, I think, might be the key factor in this game. But curious to see if they can go up north to South Carolina and win this one on the road. Riley, quickly, as we finish up, one upset alert. I'm going to go with Miami over Clemson in that one. Do you have one game that you're looking at that's favored, whether it's one of these five we've talked about or another that you're like, man, I want to put this team on upset alert this weekend?
Yeah, I think, well, with you mentioning Miami and Clemson, I'm with you on that. I don't know if people realize this. Miami, I'm pretty sure, has played 3 road games in a row, like on Saturdays. It's been 3 straight Saturdays of road games where they lost a really close one at Duke that they arguably should have won, lost a really close one at NC State that they arguably should have won. And I think I'm missing somewhere in there to where they got to get over the Schneid with.
It was Pitt last weekend.
Yes, another one that that was a contest of which team wanted to give it away more. Like there were some really bad turnovers down the stretch, some questionable shot selection from Blake Henson, but he made a couple big ones that was the difference for Pitt. But yeah, like you said, I think Miami with Nigel Pack, what he's got going on, had 5 threes in their win earlier this week, which looks like he's getting a little more comfortable. And I think with Norshad Omier and what's the other dude's name? Jordan Miller, they got enough size to bother that front. Yeah, they got some size that can bother the front line of from Clemson, which is really their strength. But aside from the ranked matchups, one I'll give a little shout out to. I'm going to say Florida continues their momentum, goes into Rupp Arena and beats Kentucky.
I love it, man. That's a great call. That's a game I looked at. It's interesting to see what will happen with that one. Make sure you check it out. 2 other games I just want to note that I'm not necessarily saying upset alert, but just keep your eyes on. Number 15 TCU goes to Stillwater to take on Oklahoma State. We look at that bottom 4 of the Big 12 and we kind of shrug them aside with that top 6 being as good as they have, but keep your eyes on what happens with TCU here with Mike Miles out of the equation right now. Could be a tough one for the Horned Frogs. And remember this, Villanova is getting back to full strength. Justin Moore's back in the middle of Creighton on Saturday. Creighton's playing really well. I'm very excited for that game to see what could happen. We'll keep our eyes on it. Man, Riley Davis, what a great sport college basketball is. I love getting to chat about it with you. And hopefully others are diving in and have had a great time hanging out with us in this conversation today. Folks, we can't wait to talk to you again on Monday's show. My co-host Andy Patton and I will be back with you to recap the weekend, give you our top 5s, and our 6-pack from the weekend. Please make sure to subscribe to the show, smash the like button, and comment. Also, review on iTunes. Man, that helps so much. Continue to grow the reach of the show. Hey, this is Isaac Schade for Riley Davis signing off. As always, my apologies to the Lawyer family. Until next week, peace.